Welcome to GCCars, my name is Eric and this is the Mazda CX-9 Signature. Now, usually all the Mazda products we've tested previously ended up being some of the, if not the best products in their respective categories. For example, the CX-5, the CX-15, of course the CX-30 were all amazing SUVs. Now that we test the CX-9 today, I already expect it to be right up there with the Telluride and the Nissan Pathfinder we've tested just previously. But of course we're going to find that out today if it will actually compete and be the best once again. And for that we're going to take a look at the exterior first, then we're going to take a look at the interior, and then of course we're going to drive it in the end. We're going to sum it all up in the final thoughts. But let's first take a look at the exterior as we always do. And how could you get a Mazda and not spec it in Soul Red Crystal? This, like I always say, is probably the nicest red paint you can get on any car in the world. It just looks so nice. Look at the flakiness. You see this nice brighter spot and it fades into dark. It just is absolutely beautiful, and I think it works well with our 19-inch wheels we have right here. And overall, I'm always a big fan of the Mazda design. Front and back, I think it looks very attractive and does work very well. Admittedly, of course, because it's a mid-size SUV, the proportions might not just be quite as nice as, for example, the CX-5, but overall it works well. I think it looks nice and upscale, and it gives you a good contrast to, for example, the Kia Telluride, which is a bit more boxy and rugged, and you just kind of have to decide what you prefer with that. But what's a little less subjective might be the interior. So how about we take a look at that? Okay, let's talk Mazda CX-9 interior. And I mean, just look at it with this white leather. It is pretty. It is very pretty, and as per usual, Mazda puts out just simply the nicest interior that you can get for the money. No Pathfinder, no Telluride, nothing that competes on a price level with these Mazdas has any interior that is as nice. Admittedly, these seats though, I feel like they're a little too smooth, like I'm sliding around a little more than I would want it to, but otherwise, like, look at the trim. We have metal, we have leathers, and like even here inside of the door handle, it is just nice and soft leather. It's just beautiful. And then obviously we have wooden trim. We have this metal framed piano black, which looks great when it's clean, but piano black is still a sin on a touch point because it will look scratchy and absolutely dusty and gross once you actually use it for more than a day without wiping it down. And on that, functionality wise though, we have our usual analog and digital mixed gauge cluster, works very well, and we have our infotainment screen, which is not a touch screen and is solely used using this touchpad. I repeat what I said about that. I don't mind it at all. I think it is fairly easy to use. It is safe to use. It is nice and high up in your peripheral vision, and at the same time it uses Android Auto and Apple CarPlay wired if you need that. Now, this is really nice in terms of like seating and comfort. Obviously not quite as much tech though as a Telluride will offer you, not as much tech than a Pathfinder will offer you. Both of those just offer you more tech, and you kind of have to weigh what you want. Do you want to have the comfort, the luxuriousness, the premium interior, or do you want to have the tech? Oh, and of course we do have a sunroof just up there. Let's take a look at the second row though, and then the third, because that's obviously very important if you want to buy a CX-9, right? Alrighty, second row of the CX-9. First of all, we have the privilege, because this one's still pretty new, to peel off a bit of the foil of the piano black, which will be very gross and greasy now, but whatever. And it is actually quite nice back here as well. So you still have soft leathers pretty much everywhere. You have your own center console in this 6-seater configuration of the CX-9, and we have heated, unfortunately no ventilated seats in the back. Front seats, by the way, heated and ventilated, but I know this is comfy. We have storage, we have our own climate controls. Obviously this is pretty good. And we also have integrated sunshades, so you don't have to look any of the cheap looking ones you just kind of like stick on it. This is obviously much more elegant of a solution. But no, this is nice, and obviously you can slide forward. Let's see where it locks in. You can slide way further forward than you can actually lock in, just to have accessibility, right? So this is how it would lock in. And 5'7", 125 pounds. Yeah, we're getting a little tight here, but it works, especially in terms of headroom. This is fine, and we can slide all the way back if we want to have maximum room. And now I am very much comfy. And of course, if you want to adjust the seat a little, you can even do that. Now this is nice, but For the important part, the CX-9 specific part in terms of the Mazda lineup, third row, we need to look at that. So open this up, fairly simple. We can now put this down, and then if you want to have maximum accessibility, like I said, we can slide it forward and just step up in here. All right, now here in the back, in the third row, this is with the seat all the way back. And at 5'7", 125 pounds, like I said, Nero actually isn't too bad. Like I said, you can move this further forward. The issues do show up at another point though, because both the Telluride and the Pathfinder offer much bigger third row spaces. So first of all, my feet are just like pretty much squeezed underneath the seat, but specifically height, headroom is a bit of an issue. If you're like 5'9" or anything above that, you won't fit in here at all. It won't be just way too cramped, which is a shame because these seats are still very nice. You have your USB ports, you have your cup holders in here, you have plenty of space for your arms, but it is just not that big, unfortunately. Of course, these are always emergency third rows, but other midsize SUVs just do it a little better. But maybe we get a little bit more storage space for that, so let's find that out. Konnichiwa. Yeah, no, we don't have much more space in here either. So let me just gracefully get out. As we have it right here, 14.4 cubic feet of space, which isn't a lot, like at all. At least we have grocery bag hangers on both sides. That's good. But if you want to have a bit more space, right? I mean, you don't use the third row all the time if you get this. You just have to pop out these little kind of protectors, which I put in way too well. And then seat 1, and then seat 2, and voila, you got 38.2 cubic feet, which admittedly starts to go somewhere. But if you want to have much more space, we can just put down 1, and put down 2, and we got 71.2 cubic feet. Still not quite as much as others offer, but overall, I mean, you can still fit a lot in here. But yeah, spacing isn't as great here, but maybe they make up for it when we drive. Okay, now out in the Mazda CX-9 on the road, and as always, we start with the launch in sport mode. Brake torque. Okay. There we go, there we go, there we go. Okay, and I would say this is plenty of speed. So, as always, as we're used to in a Mazda, we have a 2.5 liter turbocharged inline-4 producing 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque on 93. If you put 93 gas, and if you honestly, if you own it, you probably wouldn't. If you fill in 87, you get around 220 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Sent to all 4 wheels through the usual 6-speed automatic. And we've had this drivetrain in plenty of other Mazdas. We've had it in the Mazda 3, we've had it in the CX-5 and CX-50, now we have it in the CX-9. And throughout the range, of course, the horsepower effectively are less and less useful because the cars get heavier. Weighing in at about 4,400 pounds, this CX-9, I would say, comes up to the limit of what I think 250 horsepower is adequate for. This is still okay. This is still not like too slow or anything. You still have the passing power you need, but I wouldn't want to go much heavier with this engine, especially because remember this is 93, so once you fill in 87 it's going to be a little more slow. So maybe one thing to consider, but I wouldn't consider it to be really a negative. It is still adequate. In the 6-speed automatic, I usually like to complain about it a little bit, hasn't bothered me in the CX-9 at all. You notice in the first to second shift here when we did the launch, it took a little bit of time, and it wasn't like the smoothest to go from first to second gear, but overall it was still fine. And I wonder if the simple reason that I don't dislike the 6-speed in this as much is because the CX-9 is just, you know, it's heavier, and it's just the whole demeanor is just a lot less dynamic compared to like the CX-5. But we always do a little bit of a reaction test, right? So 50 kilometers an hour, and we're going to floor it and see what happens in normal mode. Fairly quick downshift, and like I said, we get up to speed reasonably quick. It is not fast by any means, but it'll do is the most important part, right? But yeah, so 6-speed manual on this, it is nice and smooth. It is not the quickest, but I didn't find it to be a negative at all. But it is time for our handling test, which we as usual do on this road, which I assume is still absolutely wrecked. Yep, it is. So let's turn in and see how it fares. And as always, Mazda just punches above its weight in terms of its price. This is very comfortable, especially for like a $55,000 midsize SUV. This is way more comfy than it kind of should be. Most bumps get absorbed extremely well. It's very comfy. Of course, a few, like sharper bumps do get transferred into the seat and into you, and you do feel them, but this road is pretty much as bad as it gets, and I don't get thrown around. I'm really fairly comfortable in here, and that is something that it's just more comfortable than all its competitors are, and all the competitors that we have tested. And same goes for noise, vibration, and harshness. You might be hearing like a little bit of rattling. That is my camera arm that just is sucked up to the windshield. So that's not the car itself. I didn't hear any rattles myself. The noise and vibrations are very low, very quiet, and you don't hear a lot from the outside world. It is a very isolated and very comfortable, clean, quiet, and to an extent serene cabin in here. And while clean, quiet, and serene might be a nice thing to have and what you primarily care about, Mazda always prides himself on the fact that they do handle better than their competitors. So let's test it. CX-9 handling test. It's floor one, so we get a downshift. This always surprises me. I always have to open up a little bit because we have a lot more front end grip than I expect. And this CX-9, honestly, Mazda, like I said, prides himself on being more engaging, better to drive than the competitors. Yes, this is a CX-9, but there's still something you can do about making it feel a little more engaging. And all of the Mazdas handle amazingly, except for the CX-5, which I did not think it was as good. And the CX-9 might be the one that is, compared to how it should handle for its size and weight, the most surprising. There is a lot of feedback through the steering wheel. I really know what's going on with the car. It has more grip than you think, and it even has like a little bit of rotation. If you push it through corners, it is actually quite enjoyable to drive, and even that translates to a nicer experience also when you're on the highway, right? Because it is precise, the steering is precise, so lane changes and all that are just very effortless, and you know what's going on. You're not like surprised by anything. This handles really, really well. This fits right into the Mazda lineup in terms of it handles better than it should be. But like I said, it's a midsize SUV. We don't really care too much about it. We just do it because we always do it, and we do it because we want to know if you're in an emergency and you need to go somewhere quickly or like have some handling, avoid an accident. This will certainly do so without any complaints. And speaking of complaints, I do have some. As per usual, Mazda, you get a lot for what you're paying for. But of course, there will be some trade-offs, and some of these trade-offs are driving tech. We do have lane keep assist, which actually works fairly well. We do have like emergency braking, which we really want to have, and we have adaptive cruise control. But where Mazda always lags behind compared to the competitors is active lane centering in a Kia or in a Hyundai or even in some Fords. If you turn it on, it'll keep you in the lane perfectly, and you really don't even have to. Like in most situations, it'll steer itself. Of course, you're semi-autonomous, so you have to keep your hands on the steering wheel, but it is a great system that takes a lot of work off your shoulders. Mazda doesn't have that. Well, they have it in like certain speeds, but it's really not highway speeds. It's more like, when you're in the like slowest speed, maybe there's some congestion, rush hour, that kind of, then it can help you. But I've talked to my Mazda rep multiple times, and they do it by choice. At least they say they do it by choice, because they want to have you be more responsible for the driving. They want to have you more connected and more engaged in the driving experience and not rely too much on technology. So that's why they did it. Doesn't negate the negative, though, that I think the Kias and the Hyundais and the Fords of the world have better driving assists. But with that being said, I think we've talked about everything we needed to talk about here in the driving segment. Why don't we send it off to the final thoughts and see if this is worth the money that Mazda wants for it. Okay, final thoughts on the 2022 Mazda CX-9 Signature, and as per usual, it is a fantastic car. It drives extremely nice, it is good to look at, the interior is just so nice, and just way better than anything you would get in the competition. The Telluride, the Pathfinder, and those, they just can't compete on how nice the Mazda is. As I always say, they are priced like regular cars, but they're more like a premium segment between luxury and regular cars. But there is a reason why you buy the CX-9 over, let's say, the CX-50 or the CX-5, and that is because you need additional third row space. You might haul kids sometimes, maybe you even haul some adults, or you need a lot of storage. And unfortunately, that's exactly where the CX-9 falls short compared to the competitors. It is just as nice as you find it in the compact SUVs Mazda offers, but the step up to the midsize CX-9 doesn't deliver on what you actually need it to deliver on. And for that reason, while I absolutely love the CX-9 and think it's the best riding, best driving, and nicest midsize SUV out there, from a utility standpoint, I think you're better off going with either the Telluride, which is incredible, has nice tech, like I said, ventilated seats in the back, or the Pathfinder, which I really liked as well. At a price of $55,550 Canadian, very easy to remember that one, it is still a decent price, and I think you won't go wrong if you ever pick the CX-9. I just think you should think twice about if you really need as much space, and if you do, like I said, there's others who might do it just a little better. But other than that, you definitely won't be disappointed with it. I certainly wasn't. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you enjoyed it, why not consider subscribing, because we upload videos about all sorts of cars every single week, including POV test drives, where you get to see these cars getting driven out of the first person. And other than that, yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. Remember to love yourself even when times are tough, and I really hope I'll see you in the next one. Thank you and goodbye.